From 1814 to 1819, when the second volume of Voyage was published, Humboldt continued his literary labors, writing a number of works, mostly scientific. In 1815, he published the first volume of New Genera and Species of Plants. It was a great folio similar to the equisensal plants. Like that, it was written in Latin and chiefly by Kunth, to whom he had committed his botanical collections. Palm plant being, as we have seen at Malmaison. A kindred work appeared in 1816, the Monography of Melastomes. This year was marked by two other publications, a map of the Rio Magdalena and a paper on the studies of mountains of India. The result of his Oriental studies, in 1817 he published the second volume of the New Genera and Species of Plants. His celebrated essay on the isothermal lines and two Latin treatises, one of the geographical distribution of plants, the other of the nature of the family of gramines. In 1818 appeared the third volume of the New Genera, a memorial upon the settlements of the limits of French and Portuguese Guiana. Busy during all these years with the works that we have enumerated, Humboldt still found time to write in the scientific reviews of France and Germany. From his early years as far back as he was superintendent of mines at Bayreuth and Ansbach. He was in the habit of contributing to them. His first papers appeared in the mining journal of von Moll and Kuhle and Hoffman's journal, and in Krell's Chemical Annals. His later ones in the Journey of Natural History, in the Annals of Chemistry, and the Memoirs of the Society of Arcueil. The Society of Arcueil was a scientific association composed of some of the most distinguished savants of Paris. It took its name from the place at which assembled Arcueil, a little village on the Bièvre, 34 miles from Paris. Favorite holiday resort of the Parisians, it was the abode of Laplace and Berthollet, the founders of the society. Its members were Biot, Gay-Lussac, Thenard, Decollado, Colette, Descollets, Malus, A.B. Bertholt, and Humboldt. They met once a fortnight at the house of Bertholt, and spent the day giving each other the results of their studies and experiments, reading the scientific papers that they had composed since the last meeting or in pleasant rambles about the neighborhood. Most of these men were members of the Institute of France, and the papers that they read at Arcueil was delivered before the august body and afterwards published in the Memoirs of the Society. To this work, which extended to several volumes, Humboldt was a constant contributor. In the conjunction with Biot, he wrote the opening paper of the first volume, published in 1807, a treatise on the magnetic observations. To the second, published in 1809, he contributed a curious paper on the respiration of fishes, the result of a great number of experiments made by himself and Provencal. It is a happy thing for a businessman whose days are passed in the noise and dust of cities to have a pleasant neighborhood within reach, a city of refuge, as it were, to which he can retreat now and then and meet a few friends and refresh his jaded spirit. Such was Arcueil to the busy Humboldt, who spent many delightful days in its quiet shades. The friends that he met there were the most congenial that he could have chosen the world over, each distinguished for some pursuit with which he sympathized, and all united in the interests of science. It was a pleasure to him to read his papers to them, and what is not always the case in these matters, a pleasure to listen to theirs in turn. They met, as we have said, at the house of Berthollet. But as the house of Laplace was nearby, the gardens of two savants adjoining each other, they were as often as Laplace's at Berthollet's. They could not but profit by the conversations of the old mathematician, for he was profoundly versed in all the sciences. He had seen much of the world, and was full of anecdotes of bygone times and men. You could tell them of D'Alembert and Diderot and the encyclopedists, the master spirits of the 18th century, if the conversation turned, as was likely, on Descartes or Newton. Their portraits hung in his study, as did those of Euler and the poor old blind Galileo. As if they wished to walk, he accompanied them, arm in arm, discussing what was uppermost in their minds as they wandered around the neighborhood, now in the fields and meadows or along the banks of Bièvre, and now by the ruins of the aqueduct built by the Emperor Julian in the olden times to convey water to his palace in Paris. There was no end of pleasant rambles at Arsoul. In addition to the best literary and scientific study in Paris, Humboldt met from time to time most of his German friends. Among others who were present there in 1814 was A.W. Schlegel and his brother William. Napoleon had fallen, the Bourbons were restored, and the different powers sent their ambassadors to congratulate them. William came as the ambassador of Prussia. He was ascended several rounds of the political ladder since he had left Albano, as Alexander himself might have done had he wished, soon after the latter settled in Paris. In 1807 and again in 1809, he filled a political mission there near the person of Frederick, the Prince of Russia. The conferences were over at the Paris. The Prince Regent of England invited the assembled crown heads and their courts to visit England. Alexander accompanied the Prussian embassy to London, where he remained some weeks. About this time, on the 29th of May, 1814, his old friend Bonpland suffered a severe loss in the death of the Empress Josephine. He was by her bed when she died. When Napoleon abdicated, he was advised by Bonpland to retire to Mexico and await there the course of events. But the great disturber of nations was still confident of his star. He could not foresee its fatal setting on the bloody field of Waterloo. Bonpland might have remained at Malmaison under the new dynasty. He was even solicited to do so by Prince Eugene, but he refused. It was no place for him since the death of his beloved mistress. He remained with Humboldt till the close of 1816, where he sailed from Havre to Brazil, carrying with him a collection of useful plants and European fruits. As soon as he arrived at Buenos Aires, the Brazilian government offered him the post of professor of natural history. But some intrigue or slander, what was never known, changed their feelings towards him, and he tendered his resignation. He was not allowed to show his collections, which would have conferred a greater benefit on the country than on himself. He was even refused a place to lecture in, dispirited by such ill treatment, but as eager as his youth to explore new lands and discover new plants and flowers. He started on an expedition to the interior, such as was the tenure of his letters to Humboldt. In August or September 1818, Humboldt made his third visit to England, where his brother William was residing as Prussian ambassador. His stay was short, for he was still in Paris during both these months. We get glimpses at this time, as of other French celebrities, in the flippant but amusing diary of Lady Morgan, writing from Paris in August to her sister Lady Clark, and she gossips in this fashion. We found dear Devon surrounded by English fashionables from whom he rushed. When we were announced into our arms alternately, we met at dinner near Chez Madame de Huchon, who received us like her children. We found some of the old inhabitants there, but Devon and Morgan set me down at our hotel early in the evening. I was so tired, and they proceeded to the Bishop of Blois, Gregory. The bishop actually embraced him, heretic as he was, before all the company, although there were 2 Italian bishops present, praised my work on France, and assured him it had been done infinite good. You may therefore be perfectly easy with us. We are to dine tomorrow with Denon. Humboldt asked to meet us. At the commencement of September, her ladyship walked to the Bar Bleu, Marché des Innocents, where she bought herself a chapeau de la Soleil, with cornflowers stuck in the side of it, a regular leghorn, 20 francs. She then went to Evelyn to see poor dear Madame Genevieve, but not finding her at home, she drove to Montmorency, where she dined deliciously for 4 francs. And on her return, she found that Humboldt had called upon her during her absence. He left a little billet instead of a card. Le Baron de Humboldt est venu informer du retour bien tardif de Sir Charles at Lady Morgan.